Hello and welcome to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Robles, joined by my friend and yours, David Sparks. How's it going, David?
I am auto launching everything, Stephen. Send all the words, send all the apps. We're going to talk about launchers today.
We're going to talk about launchers. This sent me down many rabbit holes. I've made an entire video because of this episode and what it has caused me to do. But I'm excited because I have many thoughts on launchers.
Well, I mean, coming into this, you were kind of a Spotlight guy, and
Yep, I was a Quicksilver guy back in the day. I really
Yeah.
liked that. And once Spotlight started adding features, especially last year with clipboard history, quick keys, we're going to get into all of that. I try to stay stock a lot of times, but my eyes were opened. My eyes were open, David.
I knew that. I knew as soon as I got you tempted to do this show that you would latch on to one of these apps. I just didn't know which one. Yeah.
And I have no spoilers, but I am now a new one is set as my default because of the past week of trying all these out.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, just kind of the general theory. Using a launcher app feels like magic. I'll never forget. This is a long time ago. Maybe 15 years ago. I was speaking at like a Mac user group, and I had my screen up behind me, and I was setting up to speak. So I had to open Keynote. I had to resize a window. I had to close the Wi-Fi. I had to do a bunch of stuff. And as you do, I was using my launcher at the time. I think it was Launch Bar at the time. And I was just like zipping through, blah, 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 blah. And then I said, okay, I'm ready. And somebody in the front row goes, wait a second. What did you just do? Because they were watching the screen. And
exactly.
Then my session turned into like a half hour on how to use a keyboard launcher. And I think that's an experience people have when they get into these, is they don't realize how powerful they are until they try one. And then they immediately, like you feel right now, it's like, oh, I get it. This is something that I need in my life.
Exactly. And we'll talk a little bit about our history with launchers and kind of what really pushed me over the edge of changing my default because macOS 27 is on the horizon. Two quick things I do want to mention. Thank you so much for everyone who filled out the survey last episode. Quick 2-question survey. We'll leave it in the show notes for one more week. We got some great feedback, and hopefully last week's episode and this one actually matches a lot of the feedback that people were requesting, going in depth on something like utilities and on the Mac, and we're going to do that in this episode. So.
Yeah, and we're doing some show planning, so that feedback really helps us get you what you want to hear.
Exactly. And in More Power Users today, we're going to talk about how Claude has been gaslighting me, and David maybe has some help for that.
I got some advice for you, but it's what is this episode?
862.
862. And I still can't get it right, Stephen. I jumped right into the show. I skipped
No, it's
the
good.
housekeeping
No, it's good. I like getting right to it. I do that in my videos too. But so back to what you were saying, to using a launcher.
Yeah.
Spotlight has really improved in recent years, and I'll get into some of the tricks that I've even found in the last year using it with macOS 26.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why this topic was of particular interest to me is I'm running the macOS 27 beta Golden Gate on my MacBook Air, and the choice that Apple has made is to put Siri AI and Spotlight together. So when you command space in macOS 27, you're getting both, which I understand for a discoverability reason that's going to be beneficial. People will see, oh, I can just ask a question, it's easily accessible, and it's right there while I also search for things. But as a power user, I like to think I am, and we all are, there's a lot of launch capabilities that have now gotten a little slower with macOS 27 because when you type something, it's thinking. Is this an AI request? Is this an app they're trying to launch? Is this a file they're trying to find? What is the user trying to do? And that bit of thinking, and even just some of the animations of even when you type something and then you see the window kind of slowly open underneath the Spotlight search bar, it feels slower in 27 than in past years. And that was a big reason for me to see what else is out there, what can feel faster for the things I do every day.
Yeah, and I would add to that they have done better. Ironically, the Sherlocking was kind of a file finder application. It was kind of a launcher, the original Sherlock.
Right.
So Apple is teasing its way into some of the more power features we're going to talk about today, but they're not anywhere near there. They're not going to go that far. And what I tell people is, if you're used to Spotlight and you want to try one of these, you don't have to. It's not an either or. Like on my keyboard right now, Control Spacebar is mapped to Spotlight. And there's a couple things Spotlight does well, and if I need to use that, I can put my pinky on the control key and hit spacebar, and off I go. And then my launcher is on command space, and that allows me to have the best of both worlds. So you don't have to give it up, but there is something to be said for adding some power features into this stuff.
Exactly. And for the past week, I've had command space, option space, and control space be the big three.
Yeah.
It would be Spotlight, Alfred, and Raycast. And I would switch between them all, and we'll tell you all at the end what is now my command space. But a couple tricks I do want to give Spotlight credit for. This is in macOS 26 right now, even if you're not in the beta.
Yeah.
And also this also works in 27. But you can, in Spotlight, when you launch it, we'll assume it's your command space right now.
Yeah.
You can do command 1, 2, 3, 4 for different functions. And clipboard history, which is now built into macOS 26.
Yeah.
And if privacy and security is one of your top priorities, having that built into the macOS system is great. But command space 4, you go right to your clipboard history. Command space 3, you can have shortcuts and quick actions, which are customizable. Command space 2 for applications, and command space, or 1 for applications, I think, and then 2 for files and folders. So there are some keyboard shortcuts you can do to get where you want faster, even with the built-in Spotlight. And something that I really enjoyed and taught myself to do with Spotlight is when I'm searching for a specific file format, like a Pixelmator document for my thumbnails, I would do command space, type PIX, and you'll see Pixelmator come up as one of the first entries for Spotlight. And when you hit the tab button on your keyboard, you're now told Spotlight to search just for Pixelmator documents. So I could very quickly do command space, PIX, tab, BT thumb, and even just do THU, and I would typically be right on the file, hit enter, and open it. So there are some tricks you can do if you get it under your fingers to make Spotlight pretty fast, but I discovered that there's even faster things available in some of these other launchers.
Yeah, and finding files and opening apps are table stakes. Right. If that's all you really want to do, then I think you should just stick with Spotlight, because that's enough. But if you haven't explored these other apps, I'll tell you ahead of time, my big recommendation at the end of this show is going to be just try them out. Try each one out. There's the two we're really focusing on. Try them out for a week or two and see if it's worth it to you or not. You don't have to. They both have trial periods. You don't have to go in blind and see what works. But it would be fun to talk a little bit about our launcher history. I can tell you from my personal experience, like it was I remember it was Tiger where Spotlight first showed up, and it was okay. It wasn't great. The index was slow, and but it was a good idea. And I'm always a fan of universal search of your computer. In fact, one of my if I was running Apple right now, I would really have a skunkworks project to figure out that AI search thing that Microsoft did, but better and safer and more secure, where every user can find anything on their device with a couple keystrokes. But Spotlight was good. But then I drank the forbidden fruit of I guess I ate the forbidden fruit of Quicksilver. I don't know. Yes. Were you a Mac user back then?
I was. I mean, my first Mac was 2005, and I was a 12-inch G4 PowerBook running 10.4, which was Tiger. It was Tiger, I think. 10.4.
10.4 was Tiger. Yeah. Quicksilver to me was so eye-opening, and it was a beautiful app, and it was just like something uniquely Mac. Like there's no way you would ever been able to do that on a PC. And they had this one interface, because they had different interfaces you could choose. Steve, did you ever try the Cube interface in Quicksilver?
I don't think I did.
Oh my gosh, the Quicksilver Cube interface! I still smile fondly when I think of that. It brought up a little cube, and you'd put in the noun, and you'd hit the tab key, and it would spin to the verb, and you'd put that in, and it'd spin again to give you a result. I don't know why none of these apps have tried to make a modern version of that, because
sounds fun.
It's amazing, But anyway, so I love Quicksilver. But Quicksilver,
and I will say it still exists-ish.
Ish. I went and tried it a couple of years ago after we talked about it on a prior episode of Mac Power Users, and it's not the same Quicksilver. That's all.
It's not the same. It's an open source project now, and again, you can still download it. I don't know privacy and security implications. I don't know who's really behind it, but I was a Quicksilver, like you said, back in the 10.4.5.6 days, and then, but what did you use after that?
Well, the Quicksilver developer, I think he worked at Apple or Google, or he was a high-end developer, and he got too busy. He said, "Look, I don't have time for this." And he said, "Look, if you want something," he thought the best version at the time was LaunchBar, which we're not even really covering in depth today, but is equally good. So I was using, so I went to LaunchBar after the Quicksilver guy told me to, and I loved it for years. And it's still a great app. I know there are people in our audience right now that are saying, "Why are you guys talking about Alfred and Raycast?" LaunchBar is still the one, and that's great. If that works for you, I think it's a great app. But I did get kind of pulled into Alfred as Alfred got better. And what really got me in Alfred, as we're going to talk about today, is the custom workflows, the ability to design and build your own workflows so you can really customize the app, and just kind of this wide open field of plugins that the thing does. And it's actively developed and yada, yada. So much I made a field guide on it a few years ago, the Alfred field guide. In fact, 10% off MPU Alfred. I'll put that in there if you want it. But so I've been a big Alfred user, but about a year and a half ago, because everybody was talking about Raycast, I actually bought a license to Raycast, and I pay a yearly license because it comes up in the MacSparky Labs, and I want to be able to talk about it. So I use that too. So for some time now, I have had Spotlight on Control, Option on Raycast, and Command on Alfred. And the primary one I use is Alfred, but I still do stuff with Raycast and Spotlight. But for the last 2 weeks, I've been really hammering that Option key and doing Raycast a lot, because I wanted to be able to talk to you about it.
And I watched your field guide on Alfred in preparation for this show, which is an excellent field guide, and I'll pull out some specific things that I learned there that helped me get it under my fingers. Because I tried Alfred years ago, didn't really stick with it because I didn't customize it very heavily, and then haven't tried it a lot since. So I've been a mainly Spotlight user for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and anytime I posted a video on YouTube, if it was about Mac utilities, if it was about Spotlight tips, I would inevitably get a dozen comments from people saying, "Just use Raycast, right? Raycast." Yeah. And it almost had this like negative effect on me where I was opposed to trying it almost, because I was like, it can't be that good. And a couple times I would download it, I would use it for an hour or so and be like, it's just like Spotlight, and then I would stop using it. But because for this episode, I really spent some time customizing Raycast, downloading extensions, as I did with Alfred following your field guide, and I was genuinely impressed. But we'll also talk about, like you're saying, not only the business model of Alfred and Raycast specifically, but the companies behind it. And Raycast is actually going through some big changes with a version 2 coming out soon, which you've been trying. Yeah. And there's an entire article we'll get into about kind of the technical languages that they're building version 2 with, because it is cross-platform even over to Windows. And sometimes that affects people's decision on what launcher to use because of maybe the technologies underneath or the business model behind it. So we'll get into that at the end as well.
All right, so let's kick it off with my precious Alfred.
So Alfred, you can download it for free, and then they have the paid Power Pack version, €34, about $39 to $40 US. And the Power Pack for Alfred opens up things like the clipboard history, snippets, and things like that. So if you go to Alfred, I will say specifically, like I bought the Power Pack this past week just to make sure I could try it with all the features. Yeah. But I do think that Power Pack is a key element to having Alfred be your default launcher with everything you need. But one aspect that's not really in the paid version of Alfred that you do need to pay Raycast for is syncing your preferences and settings. And with Alfred, you can apparently move your preferences folder to something that syncs either iCloud Drive or Dropbox, and you can have the same Alfred settings basically across your Macs. Do you do that for your Alfred setting?
Yeah, so I've got a folder on Dropbox called AppSync, and then in that I have subfolders like Hazel and one for Alfred, and I just put my settings in there. And when I go between them, it works fine. I have a bunch of plugins and workflows. Sometimes I'll have a workflow that won't work because I've done something in the terminal on one computer and not on the other. So it's not 100%, but it's fairly good, and it's really not that difficult.
Yeah.
And one of the points on Alfred that I like is it's a small development team, and they're really focused on the app, and the price is very reasonable. It's like $40 for the bonus version. I don't know how many years ago I paid them for that, but in comparing to Raycast, you're looking at, I think it's $100 or $200 a year, depending on which set of features you buy.
It's $96 a year, which is like $8 a month if you pay for the year. It's $10 a month if you pay monthly for their pro thing.
And I've been paying for the pro plan for a year and a half. I mean, I'm in, but I just want to be kind of conversant with it. But I think that's a real part of the conversation is the price. Yeah.
Now, the number one thing I like to test is how good are these launchers at learning your habits? Because that's something Spotlight kind of does, but it might take a while, and there's not usually customizations you can really go in there and tell it do this or do that as much. You can. Yeah. There's Spotlight settings and system settings, and you can tell it to like don't refer to files or don't show me this in search results. But when it comes to Alfred specifically, it is very fast, I found, at learning your habits. And as an example, I would launch Alfred and type maps. And the very first time I ran it, it showed me Google Maps first, as in the first result underneath my search box. But I wanted Apple Maps. And so I just, arrow keyed down, chose Apple Maps. And the very next time I launched Alfred and typed maps, it gave me Apple Maps first. And that's one of the things that these launcher apps will do as a benefit is they're going to learn your habits, whether it's the files you use, the apps, or the folders, and adapt accordingly.
Yeah, and it does that for everything. Like OmniFocus is a task manager I use a lot. If I type OF, it finds OmniFocus because it knows when I type OF, that's what I want. It uses fuzzy logic, and it's just really fast. The thing about Alfred that really I missed the most using Raycast, because there's some things that I really like in Raycast, to be honest, but is file search, because I am so wired in with file search with Alfred. The way it works in Alfred is you hit, you trigger it, so in my case, Command Space, and then you just hit the space bar one more time, and now it's in file search mode. And it gets to files very quickly. And it does the same thing where it learns your preferences. It knows that you like this folder versus that folder or whatever. Did you play with that much?
Yeah. And that's something, again, comparing Alfred directly to Raycast, I think Alfred gets the edge on speed of searching those files and folders. Being able to, I'll assume now, if you have Alfred on Command Space, Command Space and then Space again, and you're automatically in file and folder search, it is very, very fast. I would say lightning fast. And then I learned the trick, the right arrow key trick. And so if you have an app result or a file result, once you get the result you're wanting from what you're typing, you hit the right arrow key. And Alfred provides a bunch of other options, sometimes to take action on that file. If you want to open a certain thing, you want to copy it. There's just a bunch of actions kind of hidden there. And that can be very quick. Command space, search, right arrow key. And now there's a bunch of actions available to you. I definitely think Alfred gets the edge on that.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't want to do a whole lot of scoring on this, although this is kind of a showdown show. I mean, both of these apps are completely capable of doing just about everything we talk about. But yeah, you're right. It's really great. And web search, same thing. Just type in G for Google and space. I created a custom workflow with Alfred, and that's one of the things about Alfred that is a whole rabbit hole, is that you can make your own custom extensions or workflows for it. And that they're very open about third-party ones. So there's some just really amazing ones out there that you can download, but you can also make your own. And like I use Kagi, Kagi. We had the CEO of that on here about a year or two ago. And I really like it for search. I pay for search, Stephen. I don't know, have you ever tried that before?
I have not. I've heard that name a lot. I hear a lot of people like paying for it because it's so good. Yeah. But you find, so that when you do a search, like when you're looking for something, what do you choose between Kagi versus Google versus an AI system?
Always Kagi. And I just open Alfred and I type K, and then I created a custom action that goes to Kagi and searches there for me. So it's very fast.
Okay.
And you could do the same thing with, I guess I should stop saying, but you could do the same thing with Raycast as well. So I have custom search that I run through that, and I just figure of all the dumb things I spend money on every month, $10 a month to have really good search is probably worth it.
You use it a lot. Everybody uses it a lot.
Anytime I do search, that's just my entry point. And I just really, and occasionally when I do a Google search and I see the results, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm glad I'm using Cognitive.
Google search is just a quick aside. It's kind of frustrating because you'll have the AI overview, which may or may not provide what you want.
Yeah.
You have like Reddit posts as a main search result because Google made a deal with Reddit to feed all of the Reddit database, like the comments on the posts, into Google search results. And so a lot of times you don't see an actual website or article until you get past the AI overview, past the video results, past the Reddit, and past the sponsored posts. It's like... Yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe I should try Cognitive. I think I just convinced myself to try Cognitive.
You should. I mean, it really, it'll be one more piece of MPU content that ends up on your YouTube channel.
I'm hold on. I'm opening our shared Apple Note and adding to our topics search engines. Search engines as a.
It is so good. I just searched your name. I'm looking. It's like, oh man, it is nice. It is nice. I can go to your blog, your smart home, your shortcuts.
There you go. Okay, very good.
Right there, just waiting for me. Okay, we went down a rabbit hole right there, though, so let's pull out.
Yeah, we'll try it.
The other thing that we do with it is search YouTube. YouTube is another thing I do frequently. It's funny to me because in the outline you wrote type U or Goog. I type YT. That's how I do it. And that's the thing with Alfred. It's just once you type it, if you arrow down to what you want it to do once, it's just going to remember that going forward. But if I type YT, then I do a YouTube search.
So I will... Can you, and I think the answer is yes, but if you wanted to actually program a 2-letter keyword shortcut for Alfred to go to YouTube search, you can do that. Like if you didn't want to just train it, you could just tell it, when I do this, go to YouTube search.
You can. But the way I do is I just type YT and then I arrow down until I find it's going to show up in the list, and then hit return, and then it remembers it. And
that teaches Alfred, to be honest, I wrote that kind of early on when I was doing research. Now I do YY or GG.
Yeah.
So if I do a YouTube search in Raycast or Alfred, I'll type YY and then tab or spacebar and then start typing my search term.
Another one that's evolved for me over the years is Google image search with IM. So I just type IM space baseball PNG transparent background, and I get a transparent baseball that I can use.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and Alfred also does the things like clipboard history and expanding snippets, which I love text expander and still use it. And as I was testing these apps this past week, I had to be like, if I was going all in on one app, I would move all my snippets over. But I also I love text expander. And I don't know, I'd be curious to hear from you, David, like what is your default expanding tool, and why would you or did you move some of that into Alfred or other? Because it works great. Like Alfred does all the things Text Expander does.
Yeah. So Text Expander, I was early on the train. If you go and look at like the old days, I did all their tutorial videos for them. They used to hire me to write tutorial videos. They were the original sponsor of the Mac Power Users. Wow. So I was friends with the guys that kind of ran the company for a long time. I don't think they're there anymore, to be honest. I think it's kind of grown beyond me. But I still use it. And the reason is I have so many snippets, and it does code, it does scripting. I am very much a power text expansion user, and I really like the way you can categorize them. So like I have a grouping called MPU. Like when we go in to set the color for the background in Riverside, I type color.mpu. So that one uses the prefix color. They have color.ai for intentional AI, color.focus for focus. So like different color codes I've got saved. I mean, just everything in my life is in there. If you said, hey, you can't use Text Expander anymore, I could absolutely do this with Keyboard Maestro. I could do it with Alfred or Raycast.
Or Raycast, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like I could live with either one, but I have so much in Text Expander, and it's just been so solid for me over the years that I still use it.
It's the same with me, and I moved a lot of snippets over to Alfred and Raycast just to try it over the course of the week, and they all worked great. Like with my dynamically inserting dates, I have snippets where it'll take whatever's on my clipboard and insert it. I do this a lot with LLMs, so I'll have a prompt in Text Expander or Raycast or Alfred, and when I do the text expansion snippet, It puts the prompt and then whatever was on my clipboard underneath that.
Yeah.
It could be a simple thing of like you want to summarize something. You have a custom prompt for summarization. You copy an email. You copy an entire article, just like a Command A, Command C for selecting all, and then use the text expander snippet to do the prompt with your clipboard attached. They all do it. They all do it. And this is one of the, like, we don't have to dive into this too much, but like the kind of the big brain question of, do we prefer standalone apps that do a thing maybe the best, like Text Expander, versus trying to have one app to rule them all, like the Ring, and I'm kind of two minds of it. There's some things that I like having in one, like for clipboard management. I've been using Pastebot 3, which came out recently, and I really love it. Yeah. I bought it, and I'm running it. But I like the clipboard manager that I use by default to be a part of my launcher because I'm in that more often. Yeah. And just it's more natural for my fingers. And so I actually like having both because there'll be sometimes I might have copied something and the formatting gets done better in Pastebot than in Raycast, Alfred, or even Spotlight. Yeah. And so I will use Pastebot in those situations. But I like my clipboard manager being part of my launcher. But I think maybe my text snippets I like having separately in Text Expander. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's best in breed versus, part of a package. And for my clipboard manager is, push comes to shove, it's Alfred. I have a custom keyboard shortcut for it, and that's where I go for them. But like you, I've been playing with Pastebot 3. It's beautiful. There's parts of it that I really like. And I like the saved snippets feature in it. There's some things in it that it does that are really cool. But just as a preview, in the new version of Raycast, they've got a dictation tool. So you can dictate directly to it, and it'll do text for you. Probably using a Whisper engine. I haven't looked into the underlying technology, but I tried it, and Whisper Flow is better. And it's like, and I do so much dictation that I want the best possible dictation app, because that's so key to me. I don't want it to fail. And I think that's, as a user, you have to look at, are you really into clipboard management? If you are, maybe you want a custom application for it. But if you're just looking to get the things you've cut in the last few days, any one of these tools will work for you. And you've got to decide where you draw those lines. Do you want to spend extra money? I tried at one point to move my snippets into Alfred, and they weren't as good. It wasn't as good of a text expansion tool as Text Expander is. So there were a couple of problems where I was hitting friction points that I didn't have with Text Expander. And I'm like, I do this all day. I don't want any friction.
Yeah. And I will say with Pastebot, maybe someone can clip this, and I don't know if they're working on this or not, but I would love for them to bring back an iOS app. Yeah. And I understand an iOS app can't be the kind of universal clipboard manager that it can on the Mac because of sandboxing. Yeah. But to be able to have my synced clipboard history available to me on my iPhone in a Pastebot app, which they used to have with earlier versions of Pastebot, I would love that. And there's other apps that do that, like Paste, which is also available in SetApp. They have that kind of universal, you can copy on your Mac, then you can open the iPhone app, and your clippings are there as well. I would love to see that in Pastebot 3. Just throwing that out there in case they're listening.
We skipped over bookmark search, and it's a basic feature, but it's actually really handy to have all your bookmarks searchable under your keyboard combination. And it's a good reason to actually use bookmarks because you can get to any website with a search of this stuff, but if it prioritizes your bookmarks, quite often that's where you're going, right?
Yeah. And that's something I actually struggled in recent years to care about bookmarks as much because I didn't find myself using them as much. What I would do is create Safari profiles for something like Mac Power users, for Primary Tech, and then I would have bookmarks in the toolbar. But all the bookmarks I had in folders and stuff, I would not end up using. But what I found using Alfred and Raycast is when you can surface those bookmarks through a launcher that quickly, they're way more useful, like you're saying. And so I think I'm going to start bookmarking more things.
When it gets added to the corpus, right, then all of a sudden you're getting there much quicker. Another thing I do with the real key sites is I actually have them mapped in Keyboard Maestro under my conflict palette. So, Caps Lock M is my most used probably keyboard shortcut because it gets me to everything. And like the real key ones I put under that, but everything else I find through Alfred or Raycast or Spotlight for that matter.
Right. Now, one of the things I got from your field guide was bypass for shortcuts in Alfred.
Yeah.
Which
okay. I got to just take a minute to pour one out for Stephen Millard, best third-party developer for Alfred out there.
All right.
Man, he does great work. He's been a guest on Mac Power Users. We'll have to get him on.
Very good.
Under the new regime. But yeah, Stephen made that, and he makes some really great stuff.
And we'll get to kind of the extensions and store stuff in both of these apps, Alfred and Raycast, which is something Spotlight doesn't have at all. There's no third-party extensions. And so the Alfred Gallery, which you can go and you download these extensions, they're really powerful. Bypass helped me plug in my shortcuts to Alfred, which I was a little surprised initially when I first downloaded Alfred, opened it, and tried to just type in a shortcut name. I couldn't get to it. I just couldn't find the shortcut to hit enter and then run, which was different from Raycast and, of course, Spotlight built into macOS.
Or even Spotlight.
Yeah. Both of those will just pull up your shortcuts immediately, no extension required. Alfred, you do need an extension, but Bypass is great and then also adds a bunch more functionality on top of just finding and running your shortcuts.
Yeah. Just one other thing before I forget, Stephen Millard at Thought Asylum, he also makes a plugin for the Stream Deck called Mac Automation, which I think he's released since the last time he was on our show. It is, if you've got a Stream Deck, that's all I'm going to say. We'll put a link in the notes.
I got Thought Asylum right here. He has a bunch of stuff here, a bunch of plugins. Yeah. And I'm curious, he's got a whole page here on shortcuts. Oh boy. Okay. Well, I'm going to fall down that rabbit hole after this episode.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's good. So Alfred also does a bunch of things like calculator, dictionary, contacts, which are also things that Spotlight and Raycast does. Yeah. I'm curious it also does music. Do you use it even for like music playing on your
the
Mac?
music player in Alfred is actually really good because you can put it under a separate trigger, indexes your whole library, and it's a quick launcher for your music. Because I find the Apple Music app on Mac not particularly good.
No,
so I have it tied to a keyboard shortcut, and it has my favorite playlists, and it searches them. So like once again, just a couple keys on the keyboard, and I got some Miles Davis. It's just that fast, and I really like it.
That's nice.
I think that's actually one of the standout features for Alfred is the music integration. I wasn't able to get that level. I know that Raycast has coverage for it, but I felt like that the Alfred one did a better job, or maybe it's just under my fingers better.
No, I think the music player is better on Alfred. And they also both do things like system commands. So even just like going to the wallpaper settings for your Mac and system settings, it's better doing it through a launcher than like clicking the Apple icon, going to system settings, finding wallpaper, because you might have different feelings. But like the system settings is just, there's a lot there. And so finding what you want quickly is difficult.
Yeah, Stephen, for years, I only really navigate that stuff with the launcher. Another thing I do with it that might throw people is I restart and shut down with the launcher.
Oh.
Because you can do that. I haven't tested. I'm sure, I'm certain that they do that in Raycast too. But in Alfred, you just, Command Space, RES, and then restarts the Mac. You can do the same thing with shutdown. So you have, there's a screen in Alfred, in the Alfred settings pane that lets you, click some of those system commands off and on. Empty the trash is another good one. Like you want to empty the trash, you can just do that. Getting this stuff under your fingers, it's just a different way to run your computer, but I don't like using the mouse that much, and I like being able to just very quickly, trigger something.
As I was testing these the last week, I did have multiple times where I would go to my iPad with Magic Keyboard, just because there are times I like working on there when I'm outside, and
I know where this is heading. Yeah, I know what's happening.
I was just immediately like, oh, I wish I had these on the iPad. Yeah. I wish I could have a custom launcher where I could just quickly access whatever, all the things that I do to quickly do the Google search, quickly access file search, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I don't know, this will probably never happen, but I want it on the iPad.
I've heard from so many people in Mac Sparky Labs who have abandoned the iPad for a MacBook Neo or a MacBook Air just because they want launchers and Keyboard Maestro, and they're like, hey, you know what? It's close enough, it's light enough, and it gives me all my power.
Yeah, I totally get it. There were a couple times this past week where I was heading out onto my patio where I typically take my iPad and Magic Keyboard. Yeah. And I wasn't even going to be testing for this show. I was just going to do some work, and I'm like, let me take my MacBook Air because I got all my launchers on there. Yeah. And it was fun. It was fun. Yeah. So when it comes to extensions, I do want to mention, again, Alfred has the entire marketplace where you can buy these third-party workflows and extensions and really powerful. And I want to hear from you some specific workflows that maybe you've built into Alfred. I did find myself preferring the store in Raycast only because you can look at the store and search it all within Raycast and not go to a website, and even install the extensions directly in the launcher. So that was a nice thing about Raycast. And there were some extensions I found in Raycast that I couldn't find in Alfred, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for things like Bear or Notion, and specifically I can search for and open a Bear note within Raycast and go right to it, and even see a preview of the note in the Raycast launcher. And same thing with Notion, which was a huge deal for me because I switched between multiple workspaces, and I really wanted to be able to type a letter, type Notion, and then be able to search across my Notion workspaces. And I couldn't find a good way to do that with Alfred where I could with Raycast, and we'll get into that later. I don't know if you have any answers on that or
Yeah. I mean, my general kind of impression was that Alfred had a better workflow. They call them workflows in Alfred and extensions in Raycast, but it's more of a Wild West situation on Alfred where you can build your own. They give you the tools to make it right there. Now in the age of AI, you could roll your own workflow really quickly.
Right. And
I always liked that about it. And even just as recent as a few years ago, I had some friends developing these extensions, and Raycast was much more unwilling to like put your extension in their store, but it seems like now they've opened up a bit more. Like when I go through the Raycast extension store, there's more. I think in the early days they were more gatekeeping than Alfred was, so I felt like there were more options on Alfred. One of the things in Alfred I really like is that the language and the kind of the graphical interface used to build these things is really easy. Like in the field guide, I made one just to navigate Apple reminders, and using shortcut actions, I could very easily make a menu that get to specific reminders lists and just kind of give you keyboard access to your reminders really fast. And that's something anybody could make. Like I taught people how to do it in the course, and non-programmers could absolutely pick that up. Like another one that was a real killer for me that wasn't on, I couldn't find in Raycast until recently, was a way to do custom searches of specific folders. Like as a lawyer, I had a client folder, and I created a custom workflow in Alfred where if I invoked Alfred and typed CL space, and then I started typing the name, it would just search for folders in that subfolder. So it would go to the client folder alone and search for folders. So like if you were one of my clients, I could type command space CL space RO, and it would find the Robles file, and I'd hit return, and it opened me up and Finder right to your folder, so I could, if I needed to work in it. And that is so fast when you're working on a lot of different stuff. And by being able to filter it down and have it only search a specific subfolder, that means I don't get any junk in the results. And in this case, I even had a program to not look for files, so it was only looking for folders because I just wanted to open the folder. And like I'm kind of getting that result with Raycast, but I think with another week or two, I could probably have it polished to be working better. But it was very trivial for me to set that up in Alfred. So there's things like that I really liked. And then there's all the great stuff from Stephen Millard, and there's some of the other stuff that they got built in, like my custom Kagi. So I found generally I was able to do what I wanted with workflows with Alfred. But it is a bit more Wild West. Like there's another one I call Link Cleaner, LK. I type it, any link I have, if it's on the Alfred bar, I type LK, and then it takes all the cruft off the back of the link, so it's a clean link. And they've got all this stuff. I was able to recreate almost all this stuff using Raycast in the last week.
And I will say, I'll show this picture of the Alfred kind of workflow builder, and it is very user-friendly as far as, if you're familiar with like Audio Hijack and connecting blocks or this kind of like tree style building a workflow. It's very, you just drag these blocks onto the workspace, you connect them, and you can really make some powerful workflows. And I think if you are, maybe you know about AppleScript and you have some of those that you want to run, or you want to build some more complex workflows, but almost like shortcuts style, but you have some of these extensions available to you as well in Alfred, then I think Alfred might be worth the go. Like, I want to get in there, I want to tinker, I want to make some big automations that work through a bunch of stuff. I think Alfred is great for that. You had a workflow about disk storage. I think I saw in your field guide. That was really cool. And so that I think is where Alfred shines. Is a kind of like really, really fast file and folder search, and then those heavy custom workflows and automations if you want to build them. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I feel like as a user, you maybe got a little more control in Alfred to make something custom.
Right.
But they're both really good, you know.
They're both really good. Now, two other things I'll just quick mention. Alfred has an iOS app, which is kind of like the Chalk app that I've talked about. We talked about in a past episode, but you can have a little launcher as your iPhone, basically. Yeah. And the Alfred iOS app, you can tap things on the iPhone, and it will do things on your Mac, which is pretty cool. That's the Alfred remote. And general design, I will say I lean more towards the Raycast design, where it feels more modern and a little more, both of them have themes, and you can kind of change the color scheme and stuff like that. But Raycast feels just a little more modern in my mind. But again, a launcher, you're in and out pretty quickly. So, your design preference may vary.
No, I totally get it. They have different opinions as to design.
Right, exactly.
And I'm more utilitarian with this, in a lot of ways. But I think there's some parts of the Raycast that are very attractive. When you're in it, it feels nice.
Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about Raycast.
Okay, so tell us about the how much Raycast costs and the various tiers they have.
So to Raycast credit, their free tier has a ton of features, and everything from your clipboard history to the snippets to the actions, the extensions, all of that is covered on the free version. So if you don't want to pay anything for a launcher, I do think Raycast offers more features on the free tier. If you wanted unlimited clipboard history, that is the $8 or $10 a month if you pay monthly, $96 a year if you pay for the year, and you also get Cloud Sync, which is really nice. If you have multiple Macs and you want to be able to sync all that, again, you can do it with Alfred by using kind of the Dropbox, iCloud Drive folder syncing, but you can have that sync built into Raycast, and it's just a toggle you turn on in the settings. Plus, there's unlimited Raycast notes, which I didn't really use. I love bare notes, so I'm not going to change my note thing. You also get more custom themes, but the Raycast free tier is really respectable to their credit.
I want to just mention Raycast notes because that was a feature I really liked. Because you somebody gives you some quick information you see at your computer. It's like, how do you quickly capture that? I usually do that with drafts. Once again, we have the discussion of best in class versus generic app, but you want to capture some quick text. Raycast kind of has a mechanism for that built in.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And there is a Raycast iOS app, and there's actually a great shortcuts action that iOS app provides when it comes to dealing with AI tools, namely that you can choose a model, send text and image attachments to an AI through the shortcuts action, which is not something you can do outside of Apple's own intelligence actions, or you'd need some other third-party app. So there's a great iOS app, and the notes thing I'll have to check out. So what I really like is when you launch Raycast, you hit the down arrow, you can have favorites. These can be everything from a shortcut to a window management command to a system settings to searching for GIFs and emojis, which we'll get into. And so you can have favorites that are just a down arrow away if you prefer that more visual command. And of course, you can always do aliases, which in Raycast's parlance is the keyboard shortcut for a specific action or app. And I'll talk about some of the actions that I have programmed.
And just stop and ponder that for a minute. You can put a keyboard shortcut on anything this app does.
Right. And
anything.
What I like
one of my discoveries is this week is because changing display resolution is something I do often. As a screencaster, you probably do the same, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And they've got a plug-in. I also do this with Alfred. I guess I should stop saying that, but Raycast has one as well where you can change the resolution, but you can attach a keyboard shortcut to it. So attach a keyboard shortcut to the Raycast command to change resolution, then suddenly you've got a really easy way to change the resolution forward and backward.
Exactly. And I will I'll put an image to this in the show notes, and I'm going to share this window on YouTube. But in the Raycast extensions window, you can filter by only show me customized keyboard shortcuts. And I love that just that filter exists, that I can just see all the keyboard shortcuts that I have programmed in Raycast. and they have two columns. One is an alias and one is a hotkey. And when you program an alias, that's to be used in Raycast, the launcher. So for instance, I have just the letter B searches my bare notes. So I can launch Raycast with Command Space, just hit the letter B, and I'm immediately searching my bare notes. So that's great. But I also have a hotkey programmed, and I finally started using caps lock as a hyperkey, David, which you talked about many episodes ago.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's great. And in the advanced settings of Raycast, you can say, use this as a hyperkey. I put caps lock. And using that is basically telling your Mac Shift, Option, Command, and then I think whatever letter you want to program
Control,
it to.
Option, Command.
Oh, and Control, right.
Yeah.
Which is a keyboard command you're probably not using or programmed to a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So I have hyperkey, caps lock, B, and it does the exact same thing. It jumps me directly into Raycast bare note search.
Yeah.
And that means you can have things both as a global hotkey within Raycast, and if you just want it to be effective when you're in the Raycast launcher, it can be an alias. And this is where I went a little crazy, because for like search YouTube, which is something I do a lot, I have it so when I launch Raycast and type YY, I can immediately type a search term and it searches YouTube.
Yeah.
So that's if I want to launch Raycast and do it. Or I can do caps lock in the letter Y, and it jumps me to that wherever I am in my Mac, even if Raycast is not launched. And I love that distinction. That's just how my mind works. I love being able to separate, do this with this key command when I'm in Raycast, and do this with this command anywhere on my Mac, no matter what. And I love it.
Yeah. And I think you're getting religion on keyboard launchers. Sounds to me like
it is. And now I'll also mention with your searching files and folders.
Yeah.
Raycast did this better, but if you wanted to search files and folders with Raycast, what you can do is I have Command and the number 2, which was how I did it with Spotlight.
Yeah.
But I have it doing it in Raycast, and this is a global hotkey, so I can do this even without Raycast launched.
Yeah.
So if Raycast is not on screen, I can just do Command and the number 2, and I'm immediately in my file and folder search. And I can start typing a folder name or a file name, and it's pretty fast to do it. If you like doing it after launching your launcher like Alfred, I do think Alfred is faster just to do like Command Space Space, and you're typing your file or folder name. But I've done that global key for Raycast, and that worked pretty well.
It's great. But it just either way is so much faster than opening Finder and digging with your mouse.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love in Raycast, so when you do Command Space, you open Raycast or whatever your hotkey is, Command K opens up an actions menu, and you can take and customize and take action on whatever command you're looking at. So right now, I'm going to invoke Raycast, and let's say I type one of the names of my shortcuts, Start PTS Daily. I can do Command K, and this little contextual menu pops up within the launcher, and I can run the shortcut, I can configure this shortcut, and there's even a reset ranking available in this little contextual menu if I want to tell Raycast, you know what, don't put this so high in the results when I'm typing, I want to move it down. So you can reset the ranking, and you can also add it to your favorites, which are available when you hit the down arrow after launching Raycast. You can remove from the favorites, or, and this was a huge deal for me, I have so many shortcuts, David. I have over 1,600 shortcuts.
Yeah.
And a lot of them start with the same 3 letters. I have PTS for Primary Text Show, and I have a bunch of different shortcuts. For MPU, I have a bunch of MPU shortcuts.
Yeah.
And Raycast settings allows me to uncheck individual shortcuts to say, don't show this in my Raycast results.
Yeah.
And that has been a game changer where I can type Command Space MPU and only see the shortcuts that I want to run from the launcher. And that is game changing for me.
That's the 1,600 shortcut power user feature.
So that's the trick.
On Command K, though, I want to really call that out for Raycast users. Get that under your fingers, because that is contextually aware of what you've selected. Like, if you select an application, you can have it, quit the app or open the app or even uninstall the app. If you select a file, you can have it open it in the Finder. So if you want to go directly to the Finder window for that file, Command K becomes whatever it needs to be depending on what you've selected in Raycast. And I think it's if you're not using that feature of the Raycast, that's the one thing you need to take away from this episode, because it really unlocks the app. It's very similar to kind of the right arrow trick in Alfred.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, you can do this with a lot of apps on Mac, but Command, comma, will open the settings for an app. And I was doing that a lot with all of these things. I
judge apps that don't open settings with Command, comma.
Hold on, let me add that to my Can Do app.
Wait, Can
feature.
Do doesn't have it? Oh my goodness!
This is how I know Mac Power users were getting in there, because they were like, "Wait a minute, Command this doesn't do that." I was like, "Oh shoot, okay, Command
comma's always got to open the settings, Steven.
Okay, I'm going to add that this afternoon. I'll do it. Very good. But what the other setting I had to change in Raycast immediately, because it was messing with how I used it, was the return to initial state setting. And so if you go to the Raycast settings, you go to advanced. There's the setting called pop to root search. And by default, this was at like 30 seconds. And I had to change this to immediately, because a lot of times I would want to look at my clipboard history in Raycast, or maybe I was looking at shortcuts in Raycast, or I was doing a bare note search. And if I was on the clipboard history 2 seconds ago, and now I want to run a shortcut, if I did Command space to launch Raycast, it returned to my clipboard history, because it hadn't been 30 seconds yet. And in my mind, this is how Alfred functions, this is how Spotlight functions. It returns to that initial state anytime you do the Command space. So you know you're always about to type something in that main launcher area. And so that was something I had to change in Raycast immediately. The pop to root search set it back to immediately.
I did the same thing.
Okay, good.
I'm like, what is this? Why am I back in the extension store?
Exactly.
I want to work. Yeah.
Exactly. Had to do it.
Yeah.
So it does all the clipboard history stuff. It does snippets with dynamic insertion of dates and all that kind of stuff. The quick links. One of the things I liked about quick links, which is where I programmed my Google search and YouTube search, is you can tell Raycast to open a quick link in a specific app or browser. So for instance, I have Riverside programmed in Raycast to open in Brave, because that's where I record it rather than Safari, even though I use Safari as my default browser. So when I do Command space Riv, or I can literally just type the letter R, and Riverside is right there in Raycast. I can then launch Riverside in Brave, and deciding which browser it opens in has been useful for me.
Yeah, I do a similar action with Keyboard Maestro. So that for me, like launching Riverside, which is where we record these videos, it has to be in Chrome. So I have told Keyboard Maestro, and that's attached to the caps lock M key to the conflict palette for me. But I mean, there's a lot of ways to get these things done.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the extensions? Because I mentioned earlier that the extensions have improved, and like they have a really good Obsidian extension now. They did not used to have one, and I just type O and then tab, and then it searches my Obsidian notes and gets it open for me. I feel like the thing since the last time I took a serious look at Raycast, I feel like the thing that's improved the most is their extension support.
The extension support is really powerful. I love that I can open Raycast, type store, hit enter, and I'm still in Raycast, and now I'm searching for extension. And I just, for the heck of it, just searched for Kagi. Sure enough, there's an extension for Kagi. I immediately downloaded Notion, Bear, Things, and even CleanShot X has an extension in Raycast. And that was another game changer, because CleanShot X surfaces many actions that you can then add an alias or a global hotkey in Raycast. And one of the things I did was the letter R does a CleanShot X full screen recording, which I do all the time for a lot of my different videos. And now I don't even have to go up to the menu bar and hit CleanShot X, start recording. I can just do Command space, the letter R, hit enter, and my screen is recording in CleanShot X. And that blew my mind.
Yeah, there's also one of those for Alfred. I mean, so much of these, there's overlap, but it's nice though. I mean, and this is the one that really stuck for you, and you've got the tools you need in it.
Yeah.
Something Raycast does that Alfred doesn't do is they've got this big push into AI, and I think that's really where they're trying to justify the increase in price, because it does AI work for you as well. What's your experience with that?
I tried it some, and you can do an AI chat. You even have a chat window, and it keeps your conversation history. There's lots of models that are built in to choose from.
Yeah.
And that is Raycast's most expensive pricing tier, which is $192 a year, or I think it's $20 a month. You get access to all the advanced models across the AI stuff. And so if you like to use many different models and you maybe want to try Fable on this and then try OpenAI's top model Soul on this other task, Raycast could be and would be cheaper as an AI interface rather than paying $20 to ChatGPT, $20 to Claude, and $20 to whoever else, Gemini. You get access to all those models in Raycast. So the flexibility of models and power is great. For me, it didn't jive with how I use AI and how I talk to these chatbots. So I didn't find myself going back to the Raycast AI chat a lot. But was that different for you?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the context that my Claude Cowork setup does.
Right.
And so it wasn't really as useful. But I think with AI, for everybody, there's like, how far are you going to go down this rabbit hole? You and I have gone pretty deep. But if you just want an AI chatbot that you can ask questions to and get some feedback on things, this gives you a nice avenue for that. It is less expensive than a paid account with one of the particular services, and it gives you the flexibility to try different models. I think there's a real case to be made for it if that's you. But my experience with it is I just didn't find that much use for it, because the kind of work I do with AI really, for me, goes into Claude Code or Claude Cowork or even Codex, but I'm paying more per month for AI than a Raycast subscriber would.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've also, since also making the apps, I'm on like the Claude Max Double Max plan for me. So,
I used up all my tokens last week. That was rough.
It's rough.
I was strung out, man. I'm like, no more tokens. What are you talking about?
I know. Rapid fire, just a few more features that I want to call out. Raycast has a really good emoji and GIF picker that I've programmed to the hyperkey. So I can do caps lock E, and all the emojis are up super quick. I can search fast, hit the return on one, and it's inserted wherever I'm typing. I like that. And I have hyperkey G programmed to the GIF search, which is pretty cool. But I will also throw out, if you want the best GIF app on the Mac, Gnome is a really fun app made by Lex Friedman, and I have that. I've bought that as well. It can live in your menu bar. You can also do the global hotkey, but Gnome is great. But Raycast has the GIF search built in, which is pretty good. And
which is good enough, honestly. If you're going down the rabbit hole of Raycast, it's good enough.
Yeah. And last thing Raycast does that I've started programming aliases to is window management.
Yeah.
So I have command space WW, and whatever the active window is, it will move it to the first fourth as a long and tall column on my Mac. And so that's where I put Notion. Sometimes that's where I'll put an app that I'm just working on. Maybe it's Xcode. And so Raycast has those window management features built in, which is great. I still like Moom for automated window management, which we talked about in our menu bar episode, but I'll put a link into as well, because Moom also works with AppleScript, and I have shortcuts programmed for that as well.
Trigger it,
for triggering like when an app opens. Like I have Gling. For some reason, Gling really wants to open like full screen every time I open that app.
Yeah.
So I have a shortcut that whenever Gling opens, there's a Moom AppleScript that runs, and Moom dictates where it can go in the size. And so you'll see Gling open for a second, and then snaps into position.
Once again, we bumped into this best in class versus good enough, thing.
That's exactly it.
All these apps are trying, Alfred and Raycast are trying to do a lot. And that's a big selling point. And it seems like there's not really any feature that one has that the other one doesn't get sooner or later. I think if you try these, you can love these apps without having to use it for everything, is I guess what I would say. Figure out what parts of it work for you.
Exactly.
I think the Raycast has excellent window management, but I don't care to use it because I have other tools. I'm also a Moom guy.
Yeah.
And Moom does a better job. So, and that's, again, I don't know. I don't know what I paid for Moom, but it was a long time ago. It's sitting on my computer, and I might as well use the best tool.
I think it's like $15 because I just bought it a couple months ago.
Yeah, okay.
It's great.
Well, maybe I think it was $9 when I bought it. So,
yeah.
but a couple nice things Raycast did a couple times, and it seems like it does this contextually. But when I've got an appointment coming up and I trigger Raycast, it tells me of my upcoming appointments right in the window.
Oh.
Does it do that for you? I'm not even sure how I pulled that. Maybe that's a V2 thing because I'm running the beta of V2, but
I think it is because I don't have that.
That's cool. It's kind of cool. It's like, oh yeah, MPU's in an hour. That's kind of nice.
Oh, well, hold on. I just opened Raycast and just typed calendar, and there's a my schedule command.
Yeah.
And so I can see my upcoming schedule in Raycast there. It didn't like auto-populate it, but yeah, that's pretty cool.
I don't know how I did it, but somehow I was, and it doesn't like it's not doing it now, but maybe it's because I don't have any appointments in the immediate future. But yeah, that was kind of cool. It's beautiful. It's fast. I think Raycast extension support is way better than it used to be the last time I really got serious about it, and I can see why you're smitten, buddy.
All right, so David, I wanted to kind of give some final thoughts because you've mentioned several times Raycast version 2 is coming soon. They have a whole deep dive article on the technical aspect of it, but I also just want to talk about kind of the business model behind it because like you said before, Alfred is developed by a small team. They've been doing it for years. I guess you could call it independent. But they do incredible work as a small team, and I feel like you can be confident in knowing this is going to be around and supported for a long time. You think that's fair to say?
Yeah.
And so that's Alfred. And Raycast, it actually started in 2020 as a company doing something else. It is VC backed. They have a bunch of venture capitalist investment money, which is why it's been able to be developed so fast. And it's on all the platforms, Windows, Mac. It has the iOS app. And so just the nature of that business model, not to say that's risky or it's going to go away anytime soon, but I think it's helpful to understand, like, again, a lot of times the apps that we love on this show, like we've talked about just now, like drafts made by a single developer, you know, and Alfred made by a very small team. Something about that just in me personally draws me to that kind of team behind an app versus a large VC-backed company, as you don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. There will never be a committee that just decides to shutter Alfred,
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so that brings us to Alfred version 2. And
Raycast version 2.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Raycast version 2. I'm sure Alfred's on a much higher version by this point.
Yeah.
But Raycast version 2, I'm going to link this article, which is a technical deep dive into Raycast version 2. They're adding a bunch of features, like you said, dictation. I think there's some more calendar features. But they wanted it to be, as cross-platform as possible. And they supposedly did a lot of testing and research. My worry was, is this going to be an Electron app, which is a technology that developers will use so they can deploy an app across many different platforms. But Electron apps tend to not be super fluid or fast on the Mac. They have weird behaviors when it comes to menus and settings and things like that. So I was like, I don't know how we feel about that. So in this article, there is a how it's built section, and it talks about the different variations in the technology they used from it. One of the parts that actually got a comment on one of my YouTube videos is that there is a web front end. At the front end for Raycast version 2 is going to be a combination of React and TypeScript. And when I heard web front end, I was a little worried because my mind goes to like web view in an app or something that's like we talked about Trello last week, which is their Mac app is basically just a web view of their web interface, and it's not a great experience. Now, I've heard from various people in my YouTube comments that they're on Raycast v2 and it's been fine. I'm curious, David, because you've been running version 2, how has the speed and responsiveness been for you?
It's been okay. I only realized that the beta was available a few days ago, so I've only been running it a couple days. Okay. But I just looked it up in Activity Monitor. It lists kind as Apple. I don't know if that's enough for me to know if this is an Electron app or not.
They said it's not. It's not an Electron app.
Yeah.
And also, there's this nice little tree chart on this same article that I'll link down below. It talks about what does the app do on macOS and what does it do on Windows. And the macOS side, it is written in Swift, and it's using AppKit and also tells you what then goes to web view, and then the web front end, which is shared across both Windows and Mac. Things like the AI chat, the notes, the settings, the extensions UI, snippets, and the technologies behind that. So you can look at this tree and kind of ascertain, like, okay, there's a lot of native Apple languages here in the Mac version, but it is using this kind of web interface for some of the technologies. But I mean, bottom line, if it feels just as fast, I think I would be fine. And you haven't noticed any kind of slower responsiveness?
No, and the settings here are kind of nuts. The settings in version 2.
Like a lot more options and such?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're clearly also aiming this at organizations. Like they want you to have a company and buy multiple licenses and seats, and you can share snippets, and they kind of want to become like for a small company, I would assume, a way to like combine all this stuff.
Yeah. So I think just having that in mind, like this is where Raycast is going, what they're working on in their direction. You have Alfred, small team, going to be around for a while, long proven. And if you use the built-in macOS version, Spotlight will always exist also. Spotlight's going to be there forever, I imagine. Forever is a long time. But Spotlight will be there. Apple seems to continue to improve it. I still have some hesitation on what Spotlight will be in now the Siri AI age and how it's going to be kind of one thing, both for Siri AI and Spotlight functionality. It's still plenty usable if you want to use the stock option. I mean, I was using it up until the last couple weeks as I started testing these launchers. Yeah. But Spotlight is still there too, and it's free.
Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't let Raycast kind of VC nature chase you off the app. I kind of go back to the beginning of like, try them both. If you want a launcher, and frankly, try LaunchBar too. We didn't even talk about that one, but it's a good one too. But, they all have free trial periods, and one is going to jive with you. I don't think there was really hardly any features we talked about today that aren't available to both Raycast and Spotlight for the general kinds of you don't get the AI stuff in Alfred, but honestly, I don't think either one of us are that interested in that.
No.
But most, everything, there's a plugin or a workflow, or you can roll your own. I mean, one of the nice things with workflows for Alfred is in the age of AI, you can get Claude Code or OpenAI's Codex to help you make one that's very powerful. So everything now is kind of intermixable. I like Alfred because I like the people there. I've never met them, but I've emailed them frequently over the years, and I've just kind of, it's under my fingers. Like I'm looking forward to going back to it now that we've recorded the show. But I have new respect for Raycast at the same time. So I'd recommend, if you're looking at these, to give each one a try. And, after the trial period, pick one, pick a horse and get on it.
That's it. And that is what I have done, David. And so I have mapped Command Space on both my Macs to Raycast.
Nice.
I think it's going to be my default launcher going forward. I really like the speed, especially compared to macOS 27's Siri AI Spotlight.
Yeah.
The extensions and aliases really jive with how my brain works. And that's the thing, too, is, we talked about last week why I built my own task app, just because my brain jives with how I was building it. And a lot of times that's the feeling you'll get, is after you use an app for a few days, and it does take time. Again, I tried Raycast several times in the past and didn't care for it because I didn't really give it that time to marinate under my fingers and get used to the aliases and keyboard commands. So actually try it for up to a week, and then I think there's a good litmus test to say, okay, I actually have some benefits here, even if it's just one or two things that are faster, or this just doesn't really jive with my mind. And the Raycast settings page, where I can set aliases and global hotkeys, have those separate, and I don't know, it just worked with how my brain was working. And so, Raycast is now going to be my default.
Yeah, I like that. I like that we use different ones, so it gives us kind of counterpoints to discuss on this.
Exactly.
And one other thing I'd say to people that are looking at these is, don't feel like you have to use every feature in order for this app to justify its existence on your hard drive. I think that it's perfectly fine to take and leave some of the features, because both of these apps have a lot of features.
Exactly. And I'm probably going to ignore the AI and notes feature in Raycast for the time being.
Yeah.
But I'm going to use the GIF and emoji search and some of the extensions. There was some weirdness with Notion where Raycast, you can use OAuth to sign into a Notion workspace, and that will then be searchable in Raycast. You can pull up pages quickly, but you can only connect to one account at a time using OAuth, and then you have to mess around with like third-party tokens, or not third-party tokens, but you have to generate Notion tokens to connect additional workspaces. That, I wish there was some option to connect multiple, because I have Mac Power users, and I have a Beard FM space, and I had to basically choose which one I connect to Raycast unless I figure out the token thing. So there are little quirks like that, but yeah, I like it. I'm going to use it going forward.
All right, gang. Let us know what your favorite launcher is. You can go over to the forums at talk.macpowerusers.com. Let us know. We're going to be doing a feedback episode in the not too distant future. So,
well, let us know what you use, and we're going to leave that survey again down in the show notes. We'd love to hear your thoughts on topics and episodes you'd like to hear from us in the future. And if you haven't yet, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts as well. We appreciate that. We're going to go record more Power Users. We're either going to talk about Claude gaslighting or maybe the app that David built using Claude. So anyway, we're going to figure that out. You'll hear it if you're a more Power user. Thanks to our sponsors, Ecamm, Backblaze, and 1Password, and we'll see you next week.